I'd like to call order the meeting of August 26th for the Metropolitan Planning Organization of the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. Like to take action on the minutes from June 24th. We didn't have a meeting in July. Sylvia, you or action on those minutes?
All right.
Or motion?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Motion
And
second.
if everyone could please just say your name for a loyo, so, because we're still getting you.
First, motion Dan O'Neill, second. Gary.
Are we in order?
The second was,
24th.
thank you.
To the clerk.
All right, we'll go around
Following.
Auburn.
Let's go.
All right, Auburn, we have Bill Jean,
Yeah, here and yes.
our chair. And for those of you who are used to me saying Bedford Bill Jean,
Yeah.
we're now saying Auburn Bill Jean.
He gets the attention of the Manchester delegation.
Yeah. That's,
Dear Bill.
that's
Get a
how,
position and quick appointment. I don't know.
Goes to the cash.
Right. The cash only deal.
Player to be named later.
right. All right, no more talk about cash deals. Bedford. We have Dan Heath in the room.
Present.
Oh, there you go. That's who they got today.
Yeah, and online we have John Nelson.
Present and approve.
Thank you. We don't have anyone from Candia today, but from Chester, we have in the room Deb Munson.
Here.
And online, we have Andrew Haddock.
Present and abstain.
Thanks, Andrew. Deerfield in the house, we have Errol Rhodes
Here, agree.
and Fred McGarry.
Here and approve.
From Derry, we have Richard Tripp in house
Here and abstain.
and John O'Connor online.
Present and abstain.
And we also have Jeff Moulton.
Here and yes.
Thanks, Jeff. See if anyone else snuck in while I wasn't looking. Francistown, we have Gary Schneckenberg.
Present and abstain.
Great, thank you. From Goffstown, we have Joanne Duffy in-house.
Present and abstain.
And Jacob LaFontaine. Good morning.
Present and yes.
Thank you. No one from Hooksett today either. And from Londonderry in-house, we have Art Rugg
I'm present and abstain on the minutes.
and Deb Levens.
Present, yes.
Thanks, Deb. And online, we have Suzanne Brunel.
Hello, present and yes.
Thanks, Suzanne. All right. From Manchester in-house, we have Dan O'Neill
Yes, and abstain. Here
and,
Here and yes.
all right,
Here and yes.
I timed that perfectly.
Yeah, you
Yes,
did.
did.
Usually I'm not the.
All right, and we have Peter Capano.
Here and yes.
Thank you. No one from New Boston.
Also have Ray.
Oh, you went out of order here. It's Ray here and yeah.
I am so sorry. Thanks, Ray. Yeah, I didn't see it come in. As simple as that. Everyone can calm down on the Manchester way.
We were signing checks.
We'll try. All right, let's see. No one from New Boston, no one from Ware, I believe. And from Wyndham, we have Peter Griffin in-house.
Yes.
Have I missed anyone from our communities? No, but from New Hampshire DOT, we have Bill Watson.
Hi, good morning. I'm abstaining from anything.
Okay,
And DES is on.
and
Jack Wade.
right, one of our non-voting members, we have Jack Wade.
Good morning, all.
Good morning. I have some community members. Let's see, I just want to share, thanks for being here, Alex Mello from Wyndham. And let's see, we have Matt Baronis.
Yeah, Matt Baronis from Central Regional Planning Commission.
Thanks, Matt. Sure, I don't have that there. Okay.
All set, Sylvia?
Yeah, we're all good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. On to new business, review of the fiscal year 27 to 36 10-year plan. It's information only, but Nate, you're on board for that one.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. When we last left off on the 10-year plan, you may recall back in March, we adopted a set of regional project priorities for this 10-year plan and submitted those to New Hampshire DOT for their consideration. In the time from the end of March until here in August, a lot has happened with the 10-year plan. And I'm going to walk through a couple of things this morning. First, I'm gonna provide kind of a high-level picture of the big picture items that drove the 10-year plan that we have in front of us as a draft. As I go through that, Bill Watson is here, our colleague from New Hampshire DOT. He will chime in with color commentary along the way. And then I will walk through in some level of detail the specific impacts on our region with this 10-year plan. So we'll start with the big picture of the 10-year plan. I'm going to share my screen here, but I'm going to do something a little abnormal in that I'm not going to share my own content here. I am going to work off of a presentation that New Hampshire DOT gave to the Governor's Advisory Commission on Intermodal Transportation, the GASSET, as they are known, back on August 13th, when the draft 10-year plan was released. This presentation really sets some of the big picture items that drove this particular draft 10-year plan. So instead of working off my own presentation or creating my own presentation, I'm gonna go off of New Hampshire DOT's presentation here. And I'm gonna start this up. Say okay to that. Okay. Can everybody see this reasonably well online?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to start by scrolling through these first few slides, and I'm going to start here at this slide. Those first 6 or 7 slides were kind of background on the funding sources in the 10-year plan, but I really want to get to kind of the meat and potatoes of the draft 10-year plan, and that's going to start on this particular slide, the funding strategies that New Hampshire DOT used to develop this draft 10-year plan. Number one, they said they're going to focus on maintenance and preservation of the existing network of roads and bridges. Number two, they're going to continue to invest in system programs and build successes in road and bridge conditions statewide. And if you look at that bullet point right below there, it says maintain paving, bridge, guardrail, culvert, safety programs level funded at $150 million per year. Level funded. So that second point means that those programs are going to be kept whole in this draft 10-year plan. And that guided their, the approach. That's a decision. We're going to keep those programs whole. And then you have number three, the capital projects, what we deal with mostly here as an MPO. The specific projects, the improvement projects, capital projects as they're called here. And you see the first bullet point, account for inflation, and indirect cost increases. Those are all cost drivers. Construction cost inflation, indirect cost increases, those are all things that drive the cost of projects up and have driven the cost of projects up. And then you see the second bullet point, bring the federal and turnpike program into constraint. Bringing programs into constraint doesn't mean, in general sense, adding things. It means costs have gone up and we need to constrain to the available revenues. And in this case, it means cuts and delays to the capital projects. So here in the point number two, we're going to keep the paving and bridge programs whole as a state at $150 million. Bullet point number three, we're going to need to constrain the capital project side by bringing things into constraint. And again, that we'll talk about what specifically that means. But those are kind of the big picture items that DOT worked under here with the development of this 10-year plan.
And Nate, if I can add just to that point, I agree with you, 150 million a year means keeping those programs whole. However, that's whole after the same inflation, escalation, and indirect costs and things that are applied to that program. So in today's world, that's really losing money or losing buying value to stay at $150 million a year, just so folks are aware of that.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit here about the state funding that a portion of the state funding that underlies the 10-year plan. And you may remember that I think it was 2014. Senate Bill 367 passed. Senate Bill 367 was a 4.2-cent increase on the state gas tax. And when Senate Bill 367 passed, one of the stipulations in that legislation was that gas tax revenue needed to, in part, support state-backed debt service on the I-93 expansion project. And so over time, and it's more, I'm going to go to the next slide, and I'm going to show, I'm going to zoom in, and it's a little bit fuzzy, but this column here that says debt service and cost of issuing bonds for I-93, if you look here, basically it had been interest payments on the state-backed debt service all the way up here until 2026, the line between 2025 and 2026. Now it's principal payments. So the amount of state funding that was needed to back the I-93 debt service has now gone from 2.185 million to 23.415 million. So that is consuming a lot more of that state funding now. This is not a surprise. This has been the bond model for a long time. The state, I think in the past, has referred to it as the waterfall. The waterfall is now here between 2025 and 2026. And that dynamic, going back to the previous slide, that dynamic is what's driving this $20 million per year reduction in, because those dollars were going to paving and bridge programs, and now they need to go to debt service. So how does the state backfill some of that funding? Well, going to this slide, they're reallocating federal funds. So part of keeping those paving and bridge programs whole in the context of that loss of, or that redeployment of state funding, not really loss, redeployment of state funding to debt service means that they are reallocating federal funds to fill that gap and keep the paving and bridge programs whole. So that dynamic means that there's less federal funds now for the capital projects in the plan. So it's just an important, to understand that loss of, or redeployment of state funding to debt service. That waterfall has a major impact on the 10-year plan, and in particular when you see in the first bullet point here, reallocating federal funds. Those federal funds are coming from the capital projects in large part.
So Nate, it said reallocating 132 million.
Yeah.
To the 20 million that it was an increase. What's that delta?
Well, it's 20 million per year for a number of years in the 10-year plan. And so in order to fill, they're redeploying 132 million to fill that gap. But it's over the course of the 10-year plan, it's 20 million, 20 million, 20 million,
Okay. I wasn't sure if that was a total or if it was, makes sense.
So here is sort of a big picture item, slide of the different factors that are at play here. First of all, the state is assuming level formula funding, federal formula funding from the IIJA. They have to make a revenue assumption out to the full 10 years of the 10-year plan. They're assuming level funding from the IIJA. That's a conservative assumption, but it's a fair assumption. We know that the IIJA turns into a pumpkin in September of 2026. There will be reauthorization of some sort after that. Whether or not our state fares better than under reauthorization than the IIJA remains to be seen. But at this point, yeah, I think it's a fair assumption to assume level funding as a baseline scenario. We don't know. We can't guarantee an increase, or we can't bank on an increase, although we're hopeful that something would come. Increased project inflation. So construction cost inflation estimates are increasing from 3.7% per year to 4.4% per year. And that is over the course of the 10-year plan across all projects, tens of millions of dollars. That difference in construction cost inflation. And as you see here, $93 million of additional costs in the 10-year plan just due to an increased construction cost inflation estimate. Indirect costs. So New Hampshire DOT, like any public agency, when they are administering a federally funded project, gets to recoup indirect costs. Indirect costs are the costs to administer their agency. We, as the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, we get to recoup indirect costs for every hour we spend on a federally funded project. New Hampshire DOT gets to do that as well. Their federal indirect cost, or their indirect cost rate, has been 10% historically. It is now going to be 12%. That 2% difference makes a difference, $47 million to all projects in the 10-year plan due to the indirect cost change. And then we have 22 projects that had previously been programmed for the final 2 years, or fiscal 25 and 26, that are not complete and are going to be rolling into this 10-year plan. So this 10-year plan is the 27 to 36 10-year plan. 22 projects that were anticipated to be complete before the start of fiscal 27 are going to be rolling into this 10-year plan. And so that adds further pressure on constraint in the 10-year plan, because those additional projects. And then there's a line item here, overall project costs and scopes have increased. And that's not necessarily, that's not abnormal. Sometimes you get into a project and you're in the engineering phase and you discover a latent condition that requires more time and money to deal with. It happens in a lot of projects, not just New Hampshire, all over the place. That dynamic is still at play with the projects that we have in the 10-year plan.
Dave,
Yep.
can I ask, 22 are kind of getting carried over, my word. How many are actually going to get completed in the current 10-year plan? And is that 22 a surprise?
I don't know if it's a surprise. Bill could chime in here because his finger is closer to the pulse of what those 22 projects are than me. I know that DOT has faced their own staffing shortages. And they're understaffed, and even in some cases consulting teams are understaffed, and it has been a difficult proposition in some cases to deliver all of the projects that are in the existing 10-year plan on their originally anticipated schedules, given their own staffing constraints. And I think that's a dynamic that is playing into those 22 projects.
And what about the funding for those 22? Should they go to other projects in this 10-year, or will that be carried over?
That's carried over as well. That's one of the assumptions, is those projects will take $130 million worth of funding from this draft 10-year plan to complete them.
So isn't that a push? Isn't that an even swap? You took it from one 10-year and put it in the other 10-year.
No, you don't get to accumulate both. It's not money that carries forward. We lose the spending authority every year. So if you don't do your project in 25, you don't get to carry the funding to do the project over to the next year. You have to find additional funding the next year because you've lost it.
Okay, and it sounds like you didn't get to spend it in 25, so you effectively lost the use of it.
Correct. For all of the reasons that Nate has mentioned to you, because of cost increases on other projects, because of staff shortages, because of things happening. For instance, I'll give a real life example in your region today. There's a project in the draft 10-year plan that we'll be talking about through TIP and STIP amendments. The Hooksett project to do intersection improvements at 3A and Main Street is in a 10-year plan, draft 10-year plan for about $3 million. And the engineer's estimate is about $10 million for that project. So where do we find the funding for that? If the state and the town of Hooksett wants to move forward. Those are the types of things that we're seeing. Part of that is cost increase, part of that is permitting, part of that is environmental concerns. In that Hooksett project, you're very tight in right of way, so there's right of way impacts to properties along 3A. You got the Merrimack River right there. You've got a large number of factors that weren't fully identified when a project was first scoped out. And so it is not unusual for us to carry 20 or 22 projects from 10-year plan to 10-year plan. But it does, the ultimate answer is it has an impact.
So bottom line,
Another question? Yeah.
Peter Griffin from Whiteham. We talk about federal funding. At one point in time, federal funding would be there and would be understood it would be there. Do you expect the federal funding to still be there? Or will you have something coming down from Washington? It won't be, and this blows up your whole 10-year plan. Whoever wants to answer it.
So Nate said it nicely a few minutes ago. We've never seen reductions in funding from one piece of transportation and authorization to another, from one from IIJA to whatever comes next, from MAP 21 to the FAST Act to IIJA. And I've been around since the early 90s, so going back to Ice-T. We've never really seen drops in federal revenue. But this is a 10-year plan that we are developing that has no federal funding committed to it for any of the years. All of our assumptions are that level funding is not unreasonable. I do agree with Nate. I believe it's a conservative approach, but there is some risk, there is some concern that goes with that conservative assumption.
so at this point, Peter, we don't have any reason to think that there are, major transportation cuts in the offing in the next reauthorization. They're working on it right now.
Okay.
Historically, transportation infrastructure has been a generally pretty bipartisan initiative, and has enjoyed popularity from both parties. I don't think that has changed. There are certain aspects that may be partisan in terms of electric vehicle charger funding or certain types of fixed guideway funding on the FTA side. But in general, I don't think we have any reason to think that there are major cuts or something coming, that would dramatically impact the federal funding coming into New Hampshire in the next reauthorization.
Thank you.
Another question, Nate?
Yeah.
Richard Tripp, Gary. So, what time period does the funding authorization cover?
So the current federal legislation, which is known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the IIJA for short, was a 5-year bill that ends September of 26. So right now, Congress is working on reauthorization. I know Chairman Sam Graves and the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee are very much in the middle of developing their reauthorization proposal right now. I think the Senate isn't quite as far along, but the House is certainly working and has been very much on reauthorization. So whether or not they have something ready to go by September of 2026, or whether we see a continuing resolution for a little while, it's anybody's guess. But they are, the House side is definitely working hard on it as we speak. So bottom line here, take all of those factors that we just talked about. The 10-year plan is currently over-programmed by approximately $400 million due to all of those factors that we just talked about. So when you look at spending in the existing 10-year plan, it breaks down as follows. The highlighted aspect here of the individual projects, 88 total individual projects totaling $684 million. In addition to Bow Concord, which is a major turnpike expansion or partial turnpike, partial non-turnpike expansion project that has been proposed on 93 north through Bow Junction and up to, what's it, exit 15? That is a significant $300 million project on the federal side. That in general, right here, is where cuts and delays are coming from, those individual capital projects. The LPA projects here, the local public agency managed projects, these are your transportation alternatives program projects, the CMAQ projects. By and large, this 10-year plan doesn't change much on the LPA side. So if your community has a TAP or a CMAQ project, it's largely programmed in the draft 10-year plan as it had been in the previous 10-year plan. No, major funding decreases or timeline decreases are programmed for the LPA projects. What you're seeing is most of those are happening in the individual kind of capital projects. And we will talk in detail about the effects in our region in a few minutes. So when DOT looked at those, this bucket of 88 capital projects, they did an analysis. And they, I think, largely looked at those projects in terms of financial risk. And financial risk in this context is, had they already spent federal money on the project? Did they already pay for some engineering work or for some right-of-way work or whatever the case may be? If they went ahead and canceled a project or that they'd already spent federal money on, then you're in a position of having to reimburse the federal government for the money spent on that project. That is a situation that I think everybody in the state would like to avoid. As a result, a lot of the projects that were kind of more in the first half of the 10-year plan, where funds had been spent on them, generally speaking, are retained, or we're far more likely to be retained. And the cuts and delays seem to be happening largely to the projects in the second half of the 10-year plan. The projects that had gone into the 10-year plan in the last cycle or the cycle before that hadn't advanced to the point where engineering money was spent on them yet, those are the projects largely that are being cut or delayed here. And in total, there are 49 of those projects that are seeing cuts or delays around the state. They did as well do a merit analysis of the projects to help inform which ones that they were going to cut or delay. I will say that's something they did themselves internally at New Hampshire DOT. We, as the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, were not involved in any way in terms of deciding which projects got cut or delayed. We learned this kind of alongside everybody. But I think, the biggest driver was, had they already spent money on a project? And if so, those are the ones that were most likely to be retained without significant cuts. Let's see. Sorry. Okay. So this is just more of kind of where they ended up. They took this 684 million of 88 projects totaling 684 million. 39 of those totaling 350 million stayed in the 10-year plan without significant change. 15 of those projects were delayed And in large part delayed meant that they committed to continue, doing engineering and right-of-way work, but cut the construction funding, or at least deferred the construction funding beyond the 10-year plan period. And so, and then 34 projects were cut in their entirety, PE, right-of-way, and construction. And we have 3 of those in our region. We'll talk about in a few minutes. I'll also note here, suspend adding new projects into the fiscal, the final 2 out years, those being 2035 and 2036 of the 10-year plan. These were the projects that we prioritized back in March. So Beach and Maple Street, the supplemental funding for Exit 8 and Wellington Road, New Boston, the Wyndham Greenway Trail, that handful of 6 projects that we prioritized and submitted, those would have been new projects in fiscal 35 or 36 of the 10-year plan. None of those are going into the 10-year plan from our region or any of the 8 other regions in the state. So that's what, and by not including any of the new projects, $60 million is saved. Switching gears a little. Yeah, Richard.
So if they're removed from the 10-year plan, does that mean that they might be included in the next 10-year plan?
We haven't gotten that far yet in terms of what the next 10-year plan looks like or how we would approach it. The easiest thing for us to, if we were upon the next 10-year plan tomorrow, my thinking would be that we probably wouldn't hold the solicitation, and we would suggest to you that the top priority would be any of the projects that were in the 10-year plan and got cut to go back into the 10-year plan. And the next set of priorities would be all the things that we prioritized in this 10-year plan that didn't make it. That's a policy kind of decision for us to make when that time comes. But that's how I would plan on approaching it today, not knowing what the next 10-year plan cycle will bring. Turnpike side of things. So we talked to, those individual projects, a lot of those, all of those are federally funded projects off the turnpike system, but in large part. The turnpike system is a different animal. The turnpike system is run as an enterprise, essentially. It needs to be self-sustaining according to the revenues that are raised on the turnpike system. The tolls that we pay for the improvements on the turnpike system. So what does this 10-year plan mean for the turnpike system? Well, revenues are, I won't say stagnant, but flat, generally flattish, 1% increase per year. Operating cost, they're dealing with the same dynamics as the federal side, which is revenues are limited, generally static, and increased costs for constructing projects and operating the system. And that creates major constraints on the turnpike system. And so in order to deal with that, they are looking at significant changes to the capital program. So Nashua, Merrimack, Bedford, which is the F.E. Everett Turnpike expansion from Bedford to Nashua, that the completion of that is being delayed. Most of that work is done in our region. We only had a small piece of that in Bedford. The big pieces of that work are happening in Merrimack, where bridges need to be rebuilt to accommodate the widening of the turnpike. One of those larger projects is now not going to be complete until fiscal 2034. So a delay in the completion of that F.E. Everett Turnpike expansion project. Bow Concord is basically, all the construction funding is being removed from the Bow Concord project, both on the federal and the turnpike side. And importantly for us, Exit 6 and 7. Exit 6 and 7 has no construction funding programmed for it in this 10-year plan. It does have engineering and right-of-way funding program, but no construction funding. Bill, do you want to take this slide? Because you understand this one more than me.
Sure. So it's a lot of bars and a big red line. the good side of this chart is the green is the revenue that we're bringing in every year. If and Nate's explained how our turnpike revenue works. We have to pay for our bonds. We have to pay the bondholders first. We have to make sure that we can operate the system. We have to make sure that we can hold the system together with preservation and maintenance or renewal and replacement program. And then the blue part of the column is any new capital projects. And so what you're seeing right now is when we add up all of our expenses, we're way above our green projected revenues. So this is just demonstrating what Nate has already shared with you, that we need to slow down our spending if we don't change the model that we have for turnpike revenue. If we were not to do a capital program, if we were just to pay our bond and our bondholders, and we were just to operate the system and maintain the system, we would probably come pretty close to breaking even in terms of cash balance. But with the projects that are in the 10-year plan today, what you see is that by the end of the 10-year plan, we're about $700 million in debt, in the red, with turnpike cash, which is not acceptable legally for the bondholders, and it's not something that the department feels is a sustainable or it's certainly not sustainable, but it's not an acceptable outcome.
Thank you, Bill. So the draft 10-year plan, as I mentioned, has those cuts in the major projects. That's called, the quote unquote living within our means scenario, which is kind of reiterated on this slide. And then there is a consideration of another scenario. And that other scenario is what's called here a revenue enhancement scenario. So what would it look like to create enough revenue to construct the Bow Concord project, to construct Manchester exit 6 and 7, to do some other projects on the turnpike system, including all electronic tolling on I-95 in Hampton, as well as address citizen sound complaints through a type 2 sound wall program. What would be required to achieve all of those projects? And essentially, the proposal that was floated to Gasset is a $1 increase at each of the mainline toll plazas, the major toll plazas around the state, a $1 increase. And as I understand it, based on some of the financial modeling that's been done, a $1 increase at each of the major toll plazas would be able to get all of those projects to the finish line in this 10-year plan. And so Commissioner Cass, who, not to put words in his mouth, but I think believes that the turnpike system needs to meet these functions on the top in terms of safety and the needs of the public being safety and supporting the economy of the state, has floated that to the members of Gasset, who are the executive counselors, as a revenue enhancement scenario for them to consider. Whether or not there's the political will to do that remains to be seen. Each of the counselors will be having their own Gasset hearings around the state in the next couple of months, and whether or not they hear from the public about this, see. But that is at least the revenue enhancement proposal or scenario that was floated at the Gasset meeting.
Nate, I have a quick question about that.
Yeah.
So for this group, we have the construct Manchester 6 and 7, et cetera, on that list, but are there throughout the state at other RPCs, other items they're also seeing on this list that would be added if there was an additional $1 for their region, or this is
the turnpike system. So this is, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha.
This is really the kind of southern part of the state and the southeastern part of the state that are, that have the turnpike system. So these are really the hot button projects on, affecting the turnpike system, Bow Concord, exit 6 and 7, the Effie Everett Turnpike expansion to Nashua, and then, some of the I-95 in Hampton and the Seacoast area projects.
Right, that makes sense, sorry.
Bill, would you like to jump in on this one too? Or is there anything you'd like to say on this chart?
Absolutely not. A lot of us are confused why we showed that. Essentially, it's trying to draw a comparison to traffic volumes before and after the pandemic and how that's affected revenue. And the bottom line is our traffic numbers are starting to come back up, but our revenues aren't hitting what we expected to, except for on nice weekends like we've had recently.
Okay. This one is an interesting one.
We have a question.
I just have one question. Do you have any idea when these hearings are held?
We do. Generally, they're in September and October. I have to be honest, I have not seen, although it may be out there, a full Gasset hearing schedule yet. But it's probably imminent, or maybe it came out a day or two ago. I don't know.
It has not come out yet, but I can tell you, you can pencil in September 16th at Manchester Community College.
Okay.
October 9th in Bedford. And we are looking at October 30th in the Wyndham Dairy area.
Okay.
There's 3 that I know about that we're just about ready to announce.
October 9th.
All right.
Will that schedule be distributed?
Yes, once we get it, we'll make sure.
I know you typically have
distributed widely. At least you have a sneak preview of what will be on there.
Great, thanks.
This is a chart of toll rates per mile for states across the country. And this is New Hampshire's current toll rate per mile down here at the bottom. And even in the enhanced revenue scenario, New Hampshire would be here. So still well in the bottom half of toll rates per mile. It's kind of an interesting chart, up the top, Chicago Skyway, et cetera. You kind of, the different toll rates per mile across the country. But the moral of the story here is currently New Hampshire has the lowest toll rate per mile of pretty much any system.
Can you show us our neighbors, where we compare with like Mass and
Maine?
Yeah, so the Massachusetts Turnpike is right here, number 2.
Oh.
Maine Turnpike is right here, number 3. So yeah, there are our neighbors. Up here is the another section of the Mass Turnpike with different rates.
Eastern one, yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, the rest of these are kind of mid-Atlantic and so
West.
So the ones that we're most familiar with are close to the bottom.
So
But we are the bottom.
the dark part is current and the green would be anticipated.
Let's see, the dark part, the red
It's easy
is the
pass.
easy pass rate. The green is the standard cash rate, and the orange is an out-of-state easy pass supplement.
It's an eye chart.
Yes. And again, this kind of, I think reiterates what the enhanced turnpike revenue plan would be able to yield construction funding for those major projects that we talked about before, including Manchester exit 6 and 7. Also in the 10-year plan, the Transportation Alternatives Program awards were included. And based on the cycle that occurred a few months ago now in the spring of the year, and Manchester's TAP project was included in the draft 10-year plan. So, and then it gets into some other things. That's where I want to end here on the big picture aspect of the 10-year plan before I move into the specific project impacts in our region. And we are 55 minutes in, and so I'll move quickly through those project impacts in our region. Go ahead, Richard.
Is this presentation available on the website?
Yeah, if you type in New Hampshire DOT 10-year plan, it'll bring you right to their 10-year plan page, and you can click on under August 13th, there's a Gasset presentation. That's what that is. You can find that right on the internet.
They, for Goffstown, which their TAP project was ranked #1. Is there any reasoning or a way they can improve on their project so that we understand why it wasn't included in the TAP?
That I would defer to Bill on. I was not, it was ranked #1 here at the region. It was not ranked that way clearly at the state level. How the state or who was involved in prioritizing or what their thought process was about that particular application, I can't speak to, but maybe Bill can.
Yeah, there's some criteria that were published on another part of the DOT website that talked about how the DOT scoring committee was going to approach each project. However, to get to the answer that I think you're really looking for, I can ask Tom Jameson, our TAP program manager, to reach out and talk to the town of Goffstown about what the scoring committee saw in the application and what they might have ranked differently as compared to the Manchester or any other of the regional applications. I would also say that with the public hearings that are coming up, Councillor Stephen was very interested in this Goffstown project specifically, but the part of the public hearing process this fall and through the winter and spring in the legislature is an opportunity for the towns to still continue to advocate for their projects. So if there is a desire for the town of Goffstown or any other community to advocate for a project, and let's use that TAP project as an example, because I understand it's the #1 project from the region. The Gasset members will be open to hearing why Goffstown should be in a 10-year plan. And they're willing to consider that. What they're expecting to hear along with that is which project shouldn't be in the 10-year plan as a result of putting Goffstown in. So if folks are ready to have that sort of a conversation, that can happen at the public hearings as well. But I can have Tom reach out to the town with the specifics about how the Goffstown application ranked as compared to the criteria they were using in other projects as well.
With that, in the interest of time, I'm going to move really quickly here. Through the specific project impacts. Can everybody see this in full screen online?
Yes.
Okay. Our region. What does the 10-year plan mean for our region? Kind of bringing it home a little bit here. I talked about this. None of our projects that were new projects that we prioritized back in March are in this 10-year plan. And there are minimal, if any, changes to LPA projects, the locally managed, TAP and CMAQ projects. Anything that did change, we generally knew about beforehand. Project-specific items here. Bedford 1, that should say 13692F. That's the corridor study update of Route 101 from Wallace out to the Amherst town line. That has been advanced. That's one of the bright spots in this 10-year plan, has been moved up from fiscal 33 to fiscal 29. Bedford 40664, that's the Route 3 widening from Hawthorne Drive North to the airport access road. That is the start of construction has been delayed to fiscal 2030. Candia Raymond 43839, this is a rehabilitation of a section of 101. Most of this project is in Raymond, only a sliver of it comes into Candia. That has construction of that has been delayed to fiscal 27 and 28. There's a local bridge project in Candia, the old Deerfield Road bridge replacement that has been removed from the 10-year plan. I don't know the story behind that, if the town requested that to be removed or not, but I will do some homework on that. Chester 41848, that's the 102 and 121 intersection improvement project. That's being delayed from fiscal 26 to 27. I know there are lots of discussion right now about the merits of different design alternatives for that particular project. Deerfield, which we added in the last 10-year plan cycle, this is one of the 3 outright cuts in our region. The The intersection improvement project at 107 Candia Road and Church Street has been removed from this draft 10-year plan. That's obviously a disappointment. Derry Londonderry, the C project. This is the final phase of the construction of the exit 4A area. This is from Sinead Road. This is on Sinead Road from the end of the B project to 102. That has been delayed, the start of construction from fiscal 25 to 27. That's not a surprise. We knew about that through previous STIP actions. Hooksett 29611, this is the Route 3 widening from Whitehall Road to Alice Avenue in Hooksett. That project that has, again, a lot of debate within the town about the merits of different design alternatives. And that started construction being delayed from fiscal 27 to 30. Hooksett 43851, this is that 3A and Hackett Hill, 3A and Main Street project that Bill alluded to earlier. This is I believe a locally managed project. Started construction delayed from fiscal 26 to 28. Again, that's not a surprise. We knew about that from a previous TIP action that we had talked about. Hooksett Bow 45129 is a new project in the 10-year plan. It's a turnpike project to rehabilitate some I-93 overpass bridges in Hooksett and Bow. Londonderry 44537. This is a local bridge project, Stokes Hill Road over Little Cohos Brook. Construction start delayed from fiscal 29 to 30. Manchester 15837, that's Elm Street over the railroad. That's the Elm Street Bridge over the railroad. That started construction delayed from fiscal 25 to 29. That's not a surprise either. We knew about that through a previous TIP action. Manchester 16099, that is a series of projects that is the exit 6 and 7 set of projects. All construction funding for exit 6 and 7 removed from the 10-year plan. PE and right-of-way funding is still in the 10-year plan. Right-of-way funding moved to the final 2 out years. So the right-of-way funding is programmed in fiscal 35 and 36, the last 2 years of the 10-year plan. We don't talk about airport improvement program a lot, but Manchester 40563 is Manchester Airport's airport improvement program funding. For whatever reason, there's no amount programmed for the final 2 out years of the 10-year plan. I think that is a technical issue that they're working on as we speak to correct that. Manchester 41594, this is the second of the 3 wholesale cuts of projects in our region. This is the exit 1 operational improvement project in Manchester. That is being removed in its entirety from the 10-year plan. Manchester 42886, that's the roundabout at River Road and Bicentennial at the entrance of Dairyfield School. Construction delayed from fiscal 25 to 27. We knew about that, and we'll talk about that briefly as part of Amendment 2 in a moment. Manchester 43850, this is the interim safety improvement project before the exit 6 and 7 project at Eddy Road and exit 6 southbound. That's out here in our backyard, so to speak, not far from where we're sitting today. That is the removal of the second short exit 6 southbound on-ramp and funneling everything in both directions to one single ramp next to the mobile station. So currently you can only get on one way at the mobile station. After this project, the second weave will be eliminated. Everything comes through there. That is being delayed from 26 to 28. Manchester 44221, this is exit 8 and Wellington Road, which has been a major effort for us for 2 10-year plan cycles now. That is being cut in its entirety from the 10-year plan and is a disappointment for us. I don't think there's any sugarcoating that. It's disappointing to see that project be cut. Manchester 44780. This is a box culvert replacement on 121 just east of the traffic circle. New project in the 10-year plan. Manchester 45253. That is Manchester's TAP project. So it's appearing for the first time in the 10-year plan as their successfully awarded TAP project. Manchester Hooksett 43071A is a big resurfacing project on northbound 93. That is being delayed from fiscal 25 to 27. Manchester Hooksett Bow 45133. This is a new turnpike project that to deal with bridge work. Nashua Merrimack Bedford, that's the Effie Everett Turnpike widening. We talked about the completion of that entire project being delayed until fiscal 2034. There is a project in New Boston for a culvert replacement, which is technically a red list bridge carrying Route 13 over Cochrane Brook. The construction is being delayed from 28 to 31. We knew about that already through a previous tip action, so that one is not a surprise to us. A new statewide project, 40915. This is the exit renumbering and kind of the perennial dance that occurs of putting the exit renumbering in the draft 10-year plan, only for, at least in the last number of cycles, it to be removed. I'd be surprised if it made it all the way through and wasn't removed again this time, but time will tell. Ware 14338, that's River Road Bridge and Ware, that is being delayed from fiscal 25 to 27. We knew that already through previous tip actions. There's a state bridge on Route 77 over Canal 2 at Choate Brook in the town of Ware, construction being delayed from fiscal 29 to 35 for that project. And then in Windham, 40665 Ralston Road and 28 intersection improvements, construction delayed from fiscal 26 to 28. We knew about this one already as well through previous tip actions. So that is, as best I can tell at this point, in the specifics of the impacts in our region from this 10-year plan.
Any questions in-house from Nate? Any online for Nate? Thanks, Nate. You're still up.
I'm still here. Yeah.
Overview of amendment number 2 now.
2. I'll be really quick on this because some of this we let's see. I think everybody can see this full screen online and here in the room.
Yes, we can.
Tip amendment number 2, I show this slide every time, but it's particularly apropos this time. We just got done talking about the 10-year plan, which is the blue box. Right now, we're going to be talking about changes in the tip, which is the green box. These are the projects that are the closest to construction. You know, they start out essentially as the first 4 years of the 10-year plan, but they get updated a lot more often than the 10-year plan does, which is only updated every 2 years. The tip is updated regularly. And so we are looking at amendment 2 right now of our tip. You're getting a sneak preview today of the project changes that will be in tip amendment number 2. We'll be releasing the amendment on Monday, September 8th. We'll have a 10-day comment period, which closes Friday, September 19th. And we will hold a public hearing next month. Same bat time, same bat channel to consider adoption of tip amendment number 2. What are the changes here? Route 3 widening. In Bedford, 40664. So some engineering phase funding is being added in both 27 and 28, and a portion of the right-of-way phase funding is shifting from 27 to 28. That's just to reflect the current project schedule. We know, as we just talked about, there is a slip in construction, but the engineering and right-of-way process continues, and there's some adjustments happening right here. Same thing with Hooksett 29611. We know that construction is scheduled. We know from the previous discussion, construction is slipping a little bit, but engineering continues, and there will be an increase in fiscal 27-28 PE phase funding, as well as the delay of the start of construction beyond 28, which we just talked about. The Exit 6 and 7, there is some consolidation of the engineering phase funding, which is currently programmed across 3 years, fiscal 26 to 28. That's going to be consolidated into 2 years, fiscal 26 and 27. So there is still engineering that's going to be happening and funding programmed for engineering of Exit 6 and 7. And if anything, it's going to be happening in a more consolidated time frame according to this tip amendment. Manchester 24206, this is Salmon Street westbound on the Amoskeag Bridge. Increasing engineering funding, decreasing slightly right-of-way phase funding, and increasing 28 construction phase funding to reflect the current project cost estimate. This is the Dairyfield School Roundabout project. A portion of engineering funding is shifting from 25 to 26, and construction phase funding is increasing in fiscal 27. The FTA 5310 program, which is the Elderly and Disabled Transportation Service program, is seeing an increase in fiscal 25 funding to reflect what the anticipated expenditures in the project for the statewide program are. There's another statewide program for pavement tier 3 and 4 resurfacing. These are roads that, you know, many of which aren't actually, I believe, federal aid eligible. So therefore, it's really largely state funding that historically supports the pavement tier 3 and tier 4 program. This is being removed from the STIP because largely it is funded with state dollars, and we don't need to program necessarily, you know, state funded programs in the TIP. There are scope only changes. The Bedford 44296 project, you can see the approved and proposed scope. There is nothing substantive here. It's just making it more readable to the general public in terms of what the actual scope of the project is, but nothing in this scope change is changing anything substantive about the project. However, there is something substantive happening in the scope of the statewide signals 44355 project. It had previously been for signal coordination improvements on 102 in Londonderry, 111 in Wyndham, and US Route 1 in Seabrook. A fourth corridor is being added to the scope of the project in Stratham, on Route 108 in Stratham. So this is actually a substantive scope change to add a fourth corridor to the scope of this project. That's it on TIP amendment number 2. And I apologize that I've gone, let's see, an hour and 15 minutes so far between these two agenda items, but there was a lot to cover today.
Any questions for Nate additionally? Not, thanks, Nate.
Thank you.
And we'll jump into the next item is update on transportation resilient improvement plans. Suzanne.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know this is a very dense meeting today. You've already covered a lot of ground, so I'm going to spare you a presentation and just do a kind of informal verbal update about the status of the Transportation Resilience Improvement Plan. For those who are less familiar with that, this is our voluntary plan to really take a look at our surface transportation system here in the region and think about how we can be as resilient as possible in the face of climate change, including extreme precipitation events, increasing flood risk, et cetera. So all of this is authorized under the PROTECT program, and it's something we've been talking about for a while. The last time I presented to you was back in June, and that's when basically I shared a kind of reframe of our approach. So a lot of changes have happened, a lot of different directives have come out of the federal government this year, and what we wanted to do is be as efficient as possible with our time, but also complete a trip that has has as much data as possible and is nimble enough for us to use that should PROTECT funding, discretionary funding be reactivated, because we want our communities to be able to apply for that, to be able to get resilience funds, and to be able to benefit from the local cost share associated with PROTECT funds. So back in June, I talked about how we reframed our approach, and basically, rather than doing a lot of deep dive data analysis on our side, we were able to springboard off of some great work that was done by New Hampshire DOT for a statewide resilience improvement plan. So Zach and I presented our approach. We shared how we were going to create a priority project list, just to give you all kind of a new direction for where this was headed. In July, we actually finalized a draft and we shared it out with a number of different folks. Federal Highways reviewed it, New Hampshire DOT, a number of our trip champions reviewed it, including some great feedback from Maggie Baldwin at Manchester DPW. We also had some folks read it who are kind of coming at this from a different angle. So New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services, the Nature Conservancy, people who are often approaching these same issues, but from more of a environmental standpoint. So actually, we also were really benefiting from having such great connections through Lee Levine at Federal Highways. He connected us to the actual Federal Protect staff. And we also had a phone call with them. And they were very complimentary of all of the work we've done and basically wanted to kind of just coach us through additional opportunities to make this as useful as possible for our region. So with that in mind, a couple of things we are changing in the revision right now. We are trying to be much more clear about how a regional trip differs from the statewide work. As you can imagine, we're able to be much more focused and add a lot more projects that are focused specifically on our region, whereas the state has a much bigger portfolio and also has to account for the risks associated with coastal flooding and sea level rise. So we're actually able to create and expand upon the project list that New Hampshire DOT initially created for the state. The other thing that's really important is we basically kind of articulated an amendment process that we want to kind of build into this plan. Because we know when you're just doing quantitative data analysis, it doesn't always reflect what's happening on the ground. We know that communities might discover there's a major resilience concern that's happening locally. It's documented. It's something that they know is an issue, but it's not showing up according to the New Hampshire DOT's data set. So we wanted to create a process where folks can bring a potential new project to the MPO, have the plan amended, add it in, and then if that community chooses to apply for Protect funds, they would benefit from the local cost share reduction. So basically, we're doing great. We're like 95% of the way there. I wanted to let you know that kind of what some next steps are. So this is a voluntary plan. We don't need to do a formal public comment period. We don't necessarily need to get a formal approval from Federal Highways, but we do want to post this as soon as we can. We're going to share with Lee Levine, and he's going to give us a determination letter that it meets the requirements of Protect program. And then what we'll do is likely, if it's not the next, probably in our September meeting, we'll post this well in advance and I'll share the link when it's ready, but we'd like to ask you all to adopt the plan. So that's where the current status is. Stay tuned. I hope you'll be happy with it. And we're creating opportunity for you to continue to add projects if new issues arise.
Any questions for Suzanne? Great, thanks for the update.
Sure.
Any other business to come before the MPO? Not seeing any. Look for a motion to adjourn, so move.
Second.
Could we say names again?
Gary. Right. All right, let's move on to calling to order the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission meeting of August 26th. Look for a motion for action on the minutes. Who was that? Errol? Second? Yeah, I'll second. Gary.
All right.
Right. Roll
Shall we?
call. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, we'll go quick. Auburn, we have Bill.
Yes, present, yes.
And Bedford, Dan.
Present, abstain.
Thank you. John.
Present, approve.
Thank you. Chester, Deb.
Yes.
And Andrew.
Present and abstain.
Deerfield, Errol.
Present, yes.
And Fred.
Present, yes.
And Derry, Richard.
Present, abstain.
Jeff.
Hearing yes.
And John.
Present and abstain.
Thanks, John. Francistown, Gary.
Present, abstain.
Goffstown, Joanne.
Abstain.
And Jacob.
Present and yes.
Thanks, Jacob. Let's see, Londonderry, Art.
I'm present and abstain on the minutes.
Thank you. Deb.
Present, yes.
And Suzanne.
Yep, present and yes.
Manchester, Ray.
Fall into that again.
And Peter.
Present, yes.
And Dan had to skip out, I think. Let's see, and that leaves Peter from Wyndham.
Present and yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to new business. We have one item on the agenda. Oops.
Sylvie,
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
I'm
here.
so sorry.
I joined late. Present, yes.
Thank you from Wyndham. That's DJ.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, now on to new business. We have one item. We have the Southern New Hampshire Regional Comprehensive Plan update from James. Again, information only, but.
It's a while to close all my presentations.
5 minutes.
Not sure if you shared.
He's doing it now.
All right, can people online see the full screen version of this?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. So this isn't heavy hitting material. I just want to provide an update. People may remember, many of you may have participated. We had a focus group discussion about key issues affecting the region as part of the update to our continuously running comprehensive plan. So. See. I just want to take a minute and note, like we did a rather kind of informal and silly poll, but we asked people, you know, what is the top issue affecting the region? What is the most important goal? And both scenarios, housing hands down was identified as both the most important issue and the most important goal. We also asked people, you know, do we have the ability to change the outcome for the issues affecting our region? And, you know, how about half said, yes, we control that. And the other half said, I'm not sure. It really depends on what actions we take. But very few people said no, which, you know, should be unsurprising. You're all here because you believe in the process and that the process yields outcomes for everybody that are beneficial. So I just thought that was fun. I wanted to share that. For this presentation, we'll talk about the purpose of the focus group discussion and its importance to the comprehensive planning process. What was discussed, the areas of the topic areas of discussion, highlights from what was discussed, and recommendation or guidance for setting goals, some key takeaways, and then next steps in the planning process. So the first is the purpose of the focus group discussion. So the reason we get together and talk about issues affecting our region is because you as a body really set the direction for the future of the Planning Commission. And so by coming together and talking about key issues, we can better frame those issues in the plan itself. And we can better frame where we want to go in the future. And so that was a core part of having this focus group discussions. I think it's important to note that everything we talk about here that we see has been incorporated into a draft chapter 1 of the comprehensive plan update, which is now available on SNHPC's website. And so for people who might look at this PowerPoint slide at a later date, this kind of pink text at the bottom is actually a hyperlink to it. But if you go to the SNHPC webpage and you go to master plans, you can find this draft chapter 1 of existing conditions at the bottom of the master plans page. So what do we talk about as a focus group? We talked about in 4 key groups. We had land use and the economy as one group, transportation natural hazards as the second group, housing and community facilities as the third group, and then a 4th group to kind of round it out. We talked about natural resources, recreation, and energy. For the land use and economy group discussion, so here's some highlights of what was discussed. There's a shifting in the region from growth management, i.e., you know, controlling where things go, to really catching up. And I think a lot of that discussion was around the shortages in housing we have, and then the need to respond to that. There was some discussion about the importance of density and infrastructure in driving efficient land use. So, you know, especially around things like water and sewer. When there's water and sewer, you can build a certain land use pattern, and if not, you're going to get a different land use pattern. So that was something that was acknowledged. Another area of discussion was that suburban towns are transforming from dealing with rural issues to dealing with more urban areas, urban development issues. Now, an example might be, you know, a rural area might debate the merits of trash pickup, whereas an urban area might really look to understand how to manage congestion leading up to a highway exit, something like that. The other area of discussion was the economy, and the group really just identified workforce training as a priority for the region, and that there should be incentives for onshoring manufacturing jobs. We also provided some guidance around the goals to incorporate language for capacity building of local land use boards and commissions, and better acknowledgement of the value of agriculture as a land use, which I think we're all valid.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
What do you mean by capacity building on local land use boards?
Well, the guidance in the notes was pretty long. It covered a lot of different things. So it was like training, technical assistance by the commission, technical assistance by other bodies.
Okay, so it's in the notes.
Yes, and
Okay, thank you.
yeah, and you know, that's a good point. I haven't posted the notes, but I will be sure to post these notes just in the same place on the SNHPC webpage.
Thank you.
So. All right, so we have another topic area, transportation natural hazards, and the discussion there around transportation was that safety is a important priority, maybe a top priority. There was some discussion about driver behavior has changed, and maybe drivers are willing to take more risks or drive more aggressively. There was also note from the discussion about demand for bicycle and pedestrian facilities has grown. And that may be a comment that was isolated to areas that really have those, you know. So I know a lot of the towns don't have any bike ped facilities, and so that, you know, obviously that comment is not really focused towards those areas.
Lanes?
Well, it could be anything. It could be a rail trail, multi-use path, you know, so. All right, and the other topic area to discuss, that some highlights, natural hazards. There was a comment or discussion about aging infrastructure and its vulnerability to weather extremes, and a need for collaboration amongst the towns or amongst the different government bodies to implement mitigation factors, and the need to have sustained funding to do those kind of activities. So they had some guidance for language in the goals for the comp plan. One comment was about addressing equity and resiliency are not well represented, was a comment. Language about budget challenges, i.e. inflation, were missing from the guidance. And there was a desire to express a growing need for transportation alternatives for non-drivers. And I can, at least in a side note, I would note that as we're developing the long-range transportation plan, we're seeing that as a cross-cutting theme, especially for aging seniors who are sort of aging out of driving. You know, so what does somebody do when they live in a rural or suburban area and they can't drive anymore? Like, who do they call to get somewhere? And, you know, we offer a lot of help with the mobility manager and coordinating those kind of trips. But what we're hearing is that there's a concern that the demand for that is going to expand significantly over the next, say, 20 years. All right, the next topic, our group discussion, which was around housing and community facilities. Highlights on housing. There's a shortage, it's urgent, and young people and workers especially are priced out of the market. There was discussion about zoning constraints posing a barrier to new housing development, which, you know, is something we've been hearing for a number of years, especially with the completion of the regional housing needs assessment. There was a lot of discussion about zoning as a contributing factor to housing shortage. Another discussion item was that housing is not a concern for some households, i.e., you know, if you have a house and it's paid, you don't have a mortgage, and Maybe you're not so familiar or worried about the hardships that other people are facing when trying to pay for housing. Within that, there was also some subtext about tax structures, especially around education, and how those things may create housing access issues when you look at it from a municipal to municipal perspective. Some people can be priced out of communities based on those kind of matters. Under community facilities, there was an emphasis on protecting drinking water sources and a desire to expand mutual aid and regional cooperation. And I think a number of years back, there was a lot of work done at the state level around creating the ability for towns to piggyback on state contracts. And so I think that was part of the discussion there. What's the guidance for goal setting? Retain diversity of rural and urban land conditions, both at the same time. We want our rural places, we want our urban places, and I think that's a healthy goal. Someone suggested that small lots need to be part of the housing solution because land cost is such a major component of the overall cost of a house these days. Maybe, creeping over 25% of the total house cost being just the land it sits on now. There was a recommendation to facilitate a shift in cultural views towards housing. And I think that really refers to, this perennial debate between people that want housing and people who don't want to see housing or fear it. Prioritize groundwater protections, bolster mutual aid, and expand access to high quality internet were other comments. All right, last group here. They talked about natural resources, recreation, and energy. And in this, there was a lot of discussion about farming. And one of the things that was noted was that farming has changed significantly especially in the past 40 years. The way we farm, the economics of farming look very different than they did. Weather is posing a greater and greater risk to the growing of produce. Towns are not, this is a separate conversation. Somebody noted that towns are not adopting DES standards for well water. To be honest, I didn't fully understand what they were referring to there, but I assume that DES sets a standard that is optional for municipalities, or they can modify those standards. I'm not quite sure. I can look into that further. And there was comment in terms of protection of natural resources that river headwaters are important and need protection against urbanization or development. Moving on to recreation, play is changing, and this is especially true for younger generations. They're becoming much more digitally dependent, and you can see that the type of play that they're doing really is, in a lot of ways, integrated with their cell phones or other electronics. Citizens seek more access to riverfront trails was another point of discussion. There was a number of communities in our region that front or have real estate fronting on the Merrimack River. And there was an expression amongst the group or desire amongst the group to better utilize that asset. Energy. So energy prices are sensitive to weather conditions. This is no shocker to anyone, but essentially this discussion revolved around the idea that, hey, as a region, we should be proactive in finding ways to mitigate the impact of volatility in energy pricing. And then there was a discussion about the end-of-life disposal of energy sector waste. And to be honest, it was specifically dealing with solar panels. But when you think about it as a topic, it really applies to all kinds of things. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's, a coal-fired power plant or a gas station that's shut down. All these things require kind of special attention to address them once their life is over. So how did that translate into goal guidance? Well, the first one is preservation of natural resources does not always mean increased public access to the resource. And the specific example given there was like a wildlife refuge doesn't necessarily benefit from people frequenting it on a regular basis. It may actually disrupt wildlife. Another comment here was to integrate digital media in as a form of play, as it's already reshaping play, and that this might be a better way to engage the youth in communal activities. And then the final comment here, create a plan for the management of energy sector end-of-life waste. So what are the key takeaways from this? Well, amongst all the groups, we saw some notes about housing affordability and the urgency of addressing the shortage. We heard in a couple different places that transportation access and safety need further investment. Maybe the safety is sort of a right now investment, but the access, especially for non-drivers, is something we're going to have to grapple with in the future. Extreme weather patterns create cross-sector vulnerabilities. So, the energy sector, the transportation sector, all these are at risk when we have very high winds or extreme ice storms or something like that. And then regional cooperation was a theme that came up a couple different times. So we've made progress. I've taken the notes that we've gotten from this focus group discussion and revised the draft goals in the chapter 1, the draft chapter 1 comprehensive plan that is on SNHPC's webpage. I am here right now presenting the findings of the focus group discussion to you, the Planning Commission, and chapter 1, as I noted a couple times, is up on the SNHPC webpage. Our next steps are to conduct analysis of the determinants of growth. And that sounds pretty fancy, but it's really very simple. We look at growth factors, and here in this chart, we have a couple different growth factors: population, housing, employment, and then one we'll call special factors. And all of these things determine what the region will look like in the future. And we can go back in history and look at how we've grown for the past 20 years and then project that out into the future and say, this is how we might grow in the next 20 years. And so we're about to embark on that process. And Zach is going to be my close collaborator on that, because a lot of what we do with this analysis involves GIS, and Zach is the master at GIS around here. There, just a note on special factors, there could be a lot of things that happen in the region that shift the way the region operate, and we'd like to, if we can, account for that. And so some examples of this are, there's this emerging industry around biofabrication in the mill yard, and they claim thousands of jobs will come to the region. Well, that's something we would want to look at and determine how that's going to impact the region. Another example might be transportation related elements. Like Zach has done a great job of identifying that much of the growth in the region has happened around highway exits. Like 80% of the growth has happened within 2 miles of a highway exit. So how does that influence our land use patterns? So we want to look at those things. So there's work here, and there'll be findings to share with you as we advance the comp plan. And we'll be back in a couple months to share what comes out of that, and likely ask some questions about how to advance it. So with that, that is all I have for you. And if anybody has any further questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions for James? Thanks, sir. In respect to time, Sylvia, a couple other items on other business, Clausen Tethers Award nominations.
Just to remind the commissioners that we're still collecting Clausen and Tethers Award nominations. I think we're doing fairly well. Is it on the Clausen Awards, Loyal, or the? I think for the volunteers.
There's a Tethers. There's a few Tethers, and I think Clausen is the one that we might have less of.
Okay, so I think for the professional, I think we had one we were thinking of in-house here, but for one of our partners that we work with. But yeah, if you have any, I think we're doing pretty well with volunteer nominations, but with the professional, nominations. We're always looking for that. That will be at our September meeting, which will be here. We're not doing anything too special as far as the place. It still will be kind of our annual meeting. Our slate of officers remains the same, I believe, for this next year. I think everybody's agreed to that. If not, you're agreeing now. And the other, I do have a great presenter, and I'm gonna keep it under wraps for a little bit, and then surprise you in an email or something fun. But that, we will have a really great guest at our next meeting. So that's about it. I
Are we
think,
gonna need to
for now.
expand time for that, Dee?
I don't think so. I think we can do everything in an hour and a half. That's what we're a little over today. Although, not to point any fingers, Nate, but
There was a lot, there was a heavy lift there, that's for sure.
heavy lift.
Thank you, Richard.
It was a heavy lift, and we had, of course, Bill Watson tuning in as well, which is good.
Anything else to be brought before the commission? Not, look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Peter Griffin.
Peter Griffin. And Richard Tripp, seconds. All in favor? We are adjourned.
Thanks, everybody, for your time. Appreciate you.
Was I able to ever get into the meeting?
Oh,
Linda?
Yeah, I kept trying to talk, but I couldn't. Anyway, I heard the whole thing. It was great, and I would have voted yes for everything we voted on, but I couldn't get in.
All right, we'll mark.
Who are you?
We'll mark you down as virtual, and you were here. Were you here for the MPO too?
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, I got early. I was in early, but I couldn't ever figure out. I kept unmuting myself, but kept getting remuted. Like I could never speak.
Oh.
Yeah, I saw her number. I didn't know that's her number, but I saw her number.
All right, Linda, we'll mark you in as virtual. So sorry for the technical difficulties.
That's okay. It was an important one to hear, and I'm glad I was able to hear the whole thing. So thank you.
Yay.
That's a note to self.
Thank you.
The number 8275 is Linda. Number ending 8275. She just hung up, so it's a good thing. We noted it then.
Yeah.